Alright guys, in today's video we have some pretty significant information to go over that has to do with Spider Man 2 for PlayStation 5. Now this has seemingly come out of nowhere, but it does come from a potentially credible source here, and we do need to be aware that this is not official confirmation by any stretch of the imagination. This is just a rumor, but it's a very interesting one because it does seem very, very plausible. And I know that we cover a lot of rumors here on the channel, but this one I think a lot of you are going to be very interested in. I know that I was really interested in this when I came across it. So we're going to take some time here to go over this information and talk about it. But before getting into that, I do want to just take a moment here to acknowledge that the PlayStation Awards did happen. It was just a regular awards ceremony. There were no reveals or major announcements or anything like that. In fact, there was nothing at all other than just them doing the awards ceremony. Now, I did say that this could be a possibility, that even though we have speculated for a little while now there might be some type of announcement or reveal, that there also could be nothing. And so that's actually, unfortunately, what turned out to be the case. But I do want to say that it sounds to me like Sony is planning on celebrating this all throughout this week. So we do have some time here. I have to imagine that Sony's going to announce something, right? Even if it is just a single PlayStation 4 theme or avatar or something along those lines, I can't imagine that they would not announce anything during this time period. But they might not. So I would say definitely do not have any expectations, but if anything does happen or anything is announced, I will be sure to update you here on the channel. But getting back to the topic at hand, Marvel's Spider Man 2 for PS5, where does this information come from? Well, it comes from an individual named Imran Khan, who is now part of Kinda Funny. And during the latest Kinda Funny Gamescast, this is what he had to say when talking about Spider Man 2. He said, "I know too much about Marvel's Spider Man 2, so I can't speculate too much. I think a Spider Man 2 will come sooner than we think." And apparently Imran Khan also mentioned earlier in the video a Christmas 2021 release window. Now, the reason why this source may be very credible is because Imran Khan used to work at Game Informer. And we know that Game Informer has some contacts, right? They know stuff that nobody else knows. And it seems to me that during his time at Game Informer, obviously he could not say things like this. This is not the type of stuff that people who work at Game Informer talk about. They don't, talk about rumors or anything like that because they're too close to the sources, right? So they have to maintain that healthy relationship. But now that he's no longer working there, he probably left with a lot of information. And so I guess this is his way of kind of flexing that a little bit and putting it out here and talking about the things that he knows about. I mean, he sounds pretty confident when he says, "I know too much about Spider Man 2, to the point where he really doesn't want to talk about it because he would inevitably give something away. So this is very interesting to me for a couple of reasons. The first reason is because, well, yeah, it does seem like if this is true, that is much sooner than I think anybody could have really anticipated, but it does also kind of make sense. Spider-Man for Sony was, I think it's safe to say, was like their most successful game potentially this generation, at least based off of the time period it's been out so far. It has been a huge critical success for them, amazing reviews, people love it. It's a great game to play, obviously. I played it myself earlier this year. I absolutely loved it. I got the platinum. I even played all the DLC. So I'm obviously a fan. But it also sold tremendously well. I think it broke every record. As far as I know, I think Spider-Man still holds the record for most amount of units sold in the shortest period of time for PlayStation, which is a big deal. And it's not just because of the Spider-Man name, it's because of the quality of the game itself. But there's no doubt that the Spider-Man name certainly helped it, right? So what this tells me is that Sony saw the success and they're like, you know what, we really need to try and get this game out as soon as we can next generation, because if you think about it, it does line up with Sony's recent comments where they want to move as many people to the PlayStation 5 at a faster rate than they ever have before. And that's going to be a very daunting task. That's not going to be easy for them to do. And one of the only things they're really going to have to rely on to, transfer people over at a very rapid rate is the games. And so it just kind of makes sense if you think about it, looking at how successful Spider-Man was Sony deciding to say, you know what, we're going to try to have this game ready just 1 year after the PlayStation 5 launches, which is crazy. I mean, could you imagine getting Spider Man 2 on PS5 just 1 year after the PS5 is out? That would be huge. There's no doubt that would move millions upon millions of PlayStation 5 units. Imagine like a limited edition PS5 Spider Man 2 bundle. Imagine them just having a bundle in general where you buy PlayStation 5 and you get a copy of Spider Man 2. I mean, these are all things that Sony could do as a way to really just move people over. And I don't think there's any doubt that Spider Man 2 would potentially break sales records. And so the question is, well, would they release it on PS4? And this is where we don't know enough yet. Obviously, this is just a rumor, but it's a question that we would ask regardless of whether or not this rumor popped up. Will Sony, if this is true, if they release this 1 year after the PS5 being out, will they make it a PlayStation 5 only exclusive, or will they make it cross-gen? It's hard to say. I mean, if they decide to make it a PS5 only exclusive, it makes sense because that would definitely get people buying the PS5, which ultimately is Sony's goal. But at the same time, they would be missing out on that 100 million plus install base that is currently there with the PlayStation 4. And there's no doubt that that is a big reason why it got, off to a very fast sales start. That's why it did so well right out of the gate, because there was already that massive install base. So it's hard to say. I mean, if I had to just take a guess here as to what Sony would do, I think because, the PlayStation 5 would be out for 1 year at that point, I think that it would be a PS5 exclusive. I think that they would use that and leverage it as a way to be like, hey, this is why you're going to want to go buy a PS5 right now, because you can play Spider Man 2 on this. And there's just no doubt that that would be a huge selling point for their new console. So that's how I see it. Something else I do want to mention here, because I'm sure a lot of people are wondering this, is like, how could this be true? If Spider-Man just came out in 2018, September of 2018, that's really not that long ago. Doesn't it take a lot longer to develop games on this scale? Because Spider-Man was a very big game. It wasn't like some indie title. It was a big AAA title, and there's just a lot of things there that were, that took a long time for Insomniac to create. But the thing you have to understand here, and I'm not a developer, so I don't want to make it sound like I know for sure, but I just have to assume that this is kind of how it works, where, first of all, we know that the PS4 and the PS5 are going to be very, very similar in architecture, and we know that Spider Man PS4 was built for PS4. So a lot of the stuff that was built there is probably going to seamlessly be able to transition over to the PS5. But the thing that takes the longest, as far as I know, in game development is when you're making something from the ground up, when you're making things from scratch, like assets. They have to create the entire world of Spider-Man from nothing. That's what takes the longest time development-wise. And so they already kind of have that template out, right? Like, we know that the setting of Spider-Man 2, I think it's safe to say that it's going to be the same setting as the first one. It's just going to be improved upon. So I think that Insomniac's focus is mainly going to be on refinement and being iterative here, and kind of just improving upon things that improving upon the foundation that they've already laid out with the first Spider-Man game, because they have a winning formula, obviously, with the foundation that they laid out here with the first game. So it just makes total sense to me that this could actually be something that does happen. It makes sense to me to think that Spider-Man 2 is much further along in development than I think anybody may have realized. And I'm sure that, honestly, when they started to see just how excited people were getting for the Spider-Man game, and they started to see the pre-order numbers, and they started to maybe realize that, okay, this is going to sell really, really well, maybe even better than they were expecting, I'm sure the sequel was greenlit immediately. In fact, they were probably already kind of mocking up and prototyping a sequel before the first one was even out. That's kind of how these things go. So the idea of a game like Spider-Man 2 not releasing till 2022 or 2023, I will admit, that's kind of what I was expecting. That is still kind of what I'm expecting. Again, this is just a rumor. But it would make sense to me if this does turn out to be true. If only 1 year after the PS5 is out, we actually get a sequel to Spider-Man. And let me tell you, it's going to be absolutely huge for Sony if this is the case. We're thinking about other games like a sequel to God of War, thinking about a sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. You would think maybe we would get that before Spider-Man 2. But we don't know. I mean, there's so little we know that this is why we kind of have to latch on to comments like this that are made by people who potentially have inside information and inside sources, because, you know, we have no idea when to expect these games. But, you know, I think it would be safe to maybe believe in this a little bit, because Spider-Man was a huge success for Sony. And when you think about, and this is where I'm going to end the video, when you think about Sony's comments, they want to move people over to PS5 at a faster rate than ever before. That's going to be a really difficult thing for them to do. And that also means that they're going to have some huge incentives within the first couple years of the PlayStation 5's life cycle, if they have any hope of doing that at all. And having a game like Spider Man 2 ready just 1 year after the PS5's launch, yeah, that would really help them achieve that goal. It really would. So that's going to do it for the video, guys. This was some very interesting information. At this point, I want you guys to let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. Do you believe this rumor? Do you think that it is possible we are going to see Spider-Man 2 in holiday of 2021, just 1 year after the PS5 launches? And if so, what type of improvements are you hoping to see with the Spider-Man 2 compared to the first game? I'm going to be very interested to see what you guys have to say. Be sure to leave the video a like if you did enjoy it, if you found it informative, or if you just enjoyed my commentary. Really helps it out, lets me know you guys enjoy the content. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.